It is Monday, the 21st of August, 2017. What block height is it? We're about to find out. It is 481,540. How about that? I read the block height upside down. And today we're going to be talking about the Enigma, that is the Enigma ICO that was hacked, yet another hack in the Ethereum space. And this was before they even launched, just weeks. But before I do, I'm going to say to you today that we do have a very special guest. We have Samurai Wallet joining us. Say hi.
Well, we're very happy to be here on our first ever public appearance.
That's fantastic. It's a real privilege to have you, actually, because you don't generally do very many public appearances. And we're going to talk about how this current story relates to what the project that you guys are working on. But first, we're going to go through this. So this is kind of breaking as we speak. It's been happening the last few hours, with the kind of the revelations. It was spoken about on the Ethereum ETHTrader Red subreddit. Guy Zyskind is the CEO, allegedly had his account hacked, and that gave the hackers access to the Slack channel, the website, the Google account, and all of the pre-sales. As a result, a lot of those, a lot of messages were put out through the Slack channel and various other channels in order to tell people that they can send funds to certain addresses. And the number that we're hearing right now is somewhere around $500,000 worth of cryptocurrency that was taken. And Blockseer were hot on the case. This is a blockchain analysis application that tweeted out saying that it looks like the Enigma ICO hack has moved funds to Bitfinex. And so they were able to trace those movements of those coins very early on. And in fact, if you go to the website, Have I Been Pwned? I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. You can put pawned, I'm told it's pawned by our producer, Janine. You will be able to put your email address in there and you will see whether or not, like the CEO, has been pwned already or pawned. So guys, come in on this before I keep mispronouncing even more words.
It's definitely pwned.
It's definitely pwned, I'm being told. Definitely pwned.
I mean, it just kind of goes to show you that there's a real need for splitting the link between coins for fungibility in Bitcoin. Very easy to track, as Blockseer has done. They made a fantastic application. But it just goes to show how easy it is, and what Adam Nopara has done with his framework is going to basically help us build in the tools to break the links from Bitcoin transactions. And yeah, that's gonna enable some bad actors to do some bad things. But you know, it's a greater good sort of deal, right?
Well, let's first of all talk about Ethereum and the fact that so many ICOs are getting hacked, and that actually, ever since the DAO, I guess, we've had, breach after breach. And this was basically a man in the middle hack, right? Is that the hackers managed to get access to these various outlets, whether it be Slack or the website or the email, and they were able to just drop in an address or some addresses and tell people to send money. And because people are so keen to just send money to these ICOs, then it was just, I feel like we should, at this stage in 2017, be beyond a man in the middle hack. So before we even get to the fungibility and the privacy on the blockchain, I want to know the panelists' thought on this.
I think this really goes to highlight the kind of multifaceted nature of the problems when it comes to the general public using these things. This Ethereum hack and other things like this, I think, are resulting both from the over complexity of just the platform itself and their approach to bringing smart contracts to things, but that also kind of feeds into just people's competence level when it comes to using things. And this is a bit opinionated. I don't really think too fondly of Ethereum, but from my experience, it seems like a lot of the Ethereum supporters are overall a lot less technical people. And this leads to people appreciating a lot less of the security steps you need to take when dealing with computers, the many different routes that somebody could actually compromise your security, and in this case, with the nature of these platforms, your money. And it's just, these people are poorly prepared for this. They don't really appreciate the landscape and the way that threats can just come from anywhere. That's something that you think is just a completely innocuous interaction is the first step in trying to gain control of your money. And I feel like the extra complexity of the platform in combination with that kind of undereducated dynamic, it's just a recipe for disaster. And we've already seen that happen a few times now. This is just the most recent case.
Yeah, we've seen a new class of investor enter into the space, or I should even say general user, because a lot of people don't even see Bitcoin as an investment. They see it as something that's revolutionary, that's going to change the financial industry. And this new class has come in, and they don't necessarily embody a lot of the same values of the people that came before. And they see this as a way of making money. They see it as an opportunity. And of course, I'm not saying that anyone should see it as otherwise, but because they don't have the operational security, and because they don't have, they don't even understand the concept of air gapping. I mean, I've been air gapped since I was about 15 years old, but maybe other people don't even know what that concept means, and they don't understand about segregation, and they don't understand basic principles. And so they just install an app and they think, great, this is like magic internet money. And then somebody says, hey, if you put your money here, it'll go 4x, it'll go 10x. And then they just put it in, and then we have this.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds more than just a man-in-the-middle attack. It sounds like a social engineering attack, and that's really the hardest attack to prevent. There's not one size-fits-all solution to a social engineering attack. It depends on the person that you're targeting, or the people that you're targeting. As Shinobi and you both stated, the technical level of these people probably isn't that high, and the greed factor is quite high. So give them a good story, and they'll take it.
Do you mean it was socially engineered in the sense of the people that had their money taken, or was it socially engineering?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, you're probably right. I just want to read out the following statement from the Enigma project, and just to clarify what did not happen. No company funds were stolen, no wallet addresses were stolen, no passwords were stolen, no private keys were stolen, no catalyst strategies were stolen, whatever that means. No Twitter accounts were hacked, no Facebook accounts were hacked, the Enigma block was not hacked, the Telegram accounts were hacked. So it says were hacked. No Telegram accounts were hacked. Let me just clarify that. They say they've deactivated the Slack and closed it off to new joiners. Our official direct communication channel from now is Telegram. We will be confirming all official communications through Twitter as well, the Enigma team. So I just wanted to get that absolutely clarified for people. We like to clear up the FUD on this show. And yeah, I guess we can now talk a little bit more about this and about chain analysis tools. And you may know the company Chain-alasys, guys. I don't know if you're familiar. It's a Jeff Garzick's company, isn't it?
Is it, or is Scry his?
Yeah, I believe it's Scry actually is the one.
Scry, okay.
I think Chain-alasys is a different one.
Okay, thanks for the correction.
So Jeff Garzik bought up the company, the Sky, and I was actually having a GitHub conversation with him, and he said they are not doing any chain analysis. They just bought up the company. So
right. So
I'm sure he's very his board members are really happy to hear that, and his shareholders and investors.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know he said that quite a few times publicly, but I mean, when you really come down to it, like, what other use is there for analytics technology like that except doing analytics? Like, I would like to take him at his word, but that just doesn't really mesh well in my mind or make sense.
Talk is cheap.
Isn't the explicit aim for these chain analysis tools to work with law enforcement? Because essentially with the public blockchain, you have, public database of the movement of money, and without the need for a subpoena, right? So actually what you want to do from like a big data perspective is you want to mine that data and enrich it using graph theory, using, all of those tools that you have at your disposal, and then selling it, isn't it? Selling it to law enforcement, selling it to companies that may find themselves with liabilities if they're seen to be handling funds associated with hacks and so forth? Is that not the general idea? You see how the business incentives line up there?
Yeah, you can go ahead and if you have something.
Yeah, no, Para, you can come in, you can comment if you want.
I have a good use case for blockchain analysis. For example, you can write a wallet software where you are querying all the transactions from the centralized server, and a centralized server does a blockchain analysis, and it sends all the transactions to the wallet what it knows that it can be the wallet's transaction. For example, it can filter out every exchange to exchange transaction and everything, and this way you have a private wallet.
Yeah,
this is a good use case.
That's what most people use today, right? The problem is that a lot of people don't understand that when you send a Bitcoin transaction at the moment, unless you take a proactive steps, the IP address of your node that's sending it will be exposed to the node that receives it first. So when you broadcast it, your IP address gets sent. If you're using an SPV wallet or using like blockchain.info, you're not private to them. You may have what's known as front side anonymity in the sense that other people from the outside can't see who you are, but you don't have back end anonymity. Like the service provider you're using still gets to know who you are.
Yes. Step back for a moment and think about how you are querying your balances. So you basically tell all your addresses to a company or a Bloom filter to a random node and based on that, you are establishing your wallet balance, except if you are using a full node. That's it. That's why they say full nodes are more private. Or the only way you can privately use Bitcoin.
I want to also for our audience as well, because we have a wide range of people of varying capabilities and understanding, there is a category distinction that needs to be made between anonymity and privacy. You can't be anonymous on your own. For example, the common example, if you're in a crowd of people that are all wearing black and you're wearing black, you are anonymous, but you're not private because you're still in that crowd of people and you're still identifiable. It's just a question of how much resources someone wants to put into finding you, right, in that crowd. If you're wearing bright orange and everyone's wearing black, well, you know, you're not private, you're not anonymous anymore. So anonymity requires a group of people with a shared intention to be anonymous in order for it to really work. And what we're talking about, I guess, is a combination of both things. I think when Bitcoin was first promoted and it was brought to people back in 2012-13, I remember hearing how anonymous it was. And I had to keep reminding people that there were other third-party extensions extraneous to the Bitcoin protocol that you needed to add in order to make it anonymous, right? It isn't anonymous on its own. And you don't necessarily want to, you know, separation of concerns is the concept from computer science. You don't want to overload the protocol too much, maybe too early. And I guess that's perhaps why a lot of the anonymity features were kept up. Maybe that's something that Samurai and Nopara can talk about. But we had Dark Wallet. I was hanging out with Amir Taki. That seemed to kind of sunset a little bit. He's promising that he'll come back and rejoin that effort. But at the moment, when you transact on Bitcoin or Ethereum or most of these blockchain, you know, cryptocurrencies, unless it's like Monero or something, you are basically taking part in a massive immutable record of events that cannot be, or very, very difficult to delete and erase. And you need to be super careful about what information you reveal. If you use the same email address on this site and then on this site, you're only anonymous to everyone from the public facing. You're not anonymous to those two companies. If at any point a buyer comes in and buys those two companies, they now have your email address. They now know who you were at that time in history when you sent these Bitcoins from different addresses to these two different places. Does that make sense? Does anyone want to elaborate on that? Because I don't feel like a lot of people know it.
That makes sense. There is two ways the user can lose its privacy. One is on the blockchain. It's how Bitcoin transactions work. And one is on a network level, how you are broadcasting and how you are querying your transactions and etc. And usually people either talk about one or the other, but don't really combine it.
I mean, this is a problem with just regular companies, you know, like you see mergers and acquisitions just to get the data nowadays. So, I mean, in the Bitcoin space, this should come as absolutely no surprise whatsoever. It's just money. They want the bigger picture, and the way to get the bigger picture is to assemble the largest massive data. But, you know, that has its own whole trunk full of caveats.
Right. And I also want to add right now the disclaimers in the description below. This is not a paid endorsement of Samurai Wallet. You guys are just like friends of ours, and we've seen you. We really like your work, and we've invited you on to talk today a little bit about some of the issues, because we felt like the topics that we're discussing today were relevant to that. Samurai, do you want to talk at all about any of those?
I think everything was pretty much covered quite well. I will jump back to, I believe you started the conversation asking around the kind of business strategy on blockchain analysis and what it is they're actually doing.
Yeah.
And Adam Nopara gave a really there's kind of two business models, and one is much worse than the other in my view. So business model A is investigating transactions after the fact, right? So maybe, well, exactly this case where we have some missing Bitcoin, and people are interested, or not missing Bitcoin, or stolen Bitcoin or something. People are interested, where is this going? What exchange is it being sold on? You know, can we determine who these people are based on it? It's an investigation tool. And then the second business model seems to be more insidious, in my view, is real-time blacklist creation based off of analytics that have been, or data sets that have been stored or purchased or whatever the case is. And we're seeing these pop up more and more. I don't know how good their services actually are. But there's plenty of companies out there these days who are offering blacklist services for Bitcoin, meaning they'll scan an address or scan a destination address or a sending address and say, hey, you know, this has a score of 10 out of 100. This is a bad guy. Don't transact with them. And to me, that is a really slippery slope that what we at Samurai Wallet would like to do is kind of make that business model irrelevant.
And how do you do that? What's the tool you use? Confidential transactions, or use similar sort of thing that Dark Wallet was doing?
Well, I think it's a mixture. You know, it's a mixture of tools, and it's not an easy thing to do. So, yeah, it's a combination. Stealth addresses. We have a version of stealth addresses called reusable payment codes based off of a BIP47. It's very similar to stealth addresses. It's also the part of the zero-link framework in the Chaumian CoinJoin of the Postmix wallet, separating the links out between the different coins. And it's coin selection techniques when you're creating transactions, making sure you don't merge known inputs together. All various tools and techniques and stuff that we haven't figured out yet, quite frankly, that need to be figured out still. So it's the goal, not where we're at right now, but it's absolutely the goal. And we introduced Ricochet, for example, based off of a talk I think that Adam Back and Matt Corallo gave a couple years ago, where they introduced the concept of adding in additional hops between a send and a receive transaction, which introduces plausible deniability if done correctly. So all of these different tools can be put together and merged together in one kind of nicely packaged application, and then hopefully that application ends up being Samurai Wallet and others, please.
Yeah.
So I think that's enough on that topic from us.
Yeah. I remember talking to Peter Todd about this, and I know he's spoken more broadly about it, but when people, money's been digital for a long time. And I remember probably the first known instance I can think of was Barclaycard in the 70s, where they were trying to get people to adopt these plastic things. And it's not radical to say that we should have anonymity with digital money, because it's the same analog that we had with physical cash, right? People didn't go around checking the serial numbers on every bank number they received, big banknote they received, because it was just too much effort. Imagine if every banknote had a QR code, and every time you spent it, the QR code was scanned in and your face was captured. And I mean, that would, imagine doing that like 10, 20 years ago, that would just feel wrong. But over time, we had this kind of feature creep or mission creep, where more and more transactions were pushed to being towards digital. And I think part of that was a convenience factor, and the fact that we were undergoing globalization and money needs to be able to cross borders. But also there's another incentive and another motive here, I think, which is surveillance. And the reason why cash is being phased out, and the reason why you're being pushed more and more into the plastic things that you have to go and, you tap on the card. And nowadays, a lot of supermarkets are doing away with the cash tills, and now they've got these self-service machines that only take credit card or debit cards. A lot of purchases go online, of course. Is that now it's the value isn't just in the money, it's in what you do with the money. The metadata actually becomes somewhat more valuable than the money itself, because Amazon, for example, is not really in the business of selling you products as much as it is learning about you and your spending habits, so that it can put that in a database and make that valuable. And its equity, its share price goes up because of that equity that you're giving it. You're giving it extra value. Whether or not they price that into the products, whether or not they discount the products appropriately to compensate you for that breach of your privacy and a breach of your shopping privacy, I don't know. I don't know if any kind of research has been done into it, but that's what I will say about that. So if we don't have anything more to talk about on that topic, are we done? Should we go on to the next one?
I actually kind of wanted to give Nopar a chance to talk about his hidden wallet architecture, because pretty much from where I stand, like both Samurai Wallet and Hidden Wallet are taking great strides in privacy on the network and the blockchain level. It's just they're taking kind of different approaches to get there. And I would kind of like to hear him explain the full block SPV mode a little more, because I think that is a huge privacy gain on the network level for users.
Yes, we have a same goal. We are moving to the same direction. We just started from different angles. Samurai is implementing PIPs of Christoph Atlas and open privacy projects about blockchain tracking and stuff like that. I was going from the how to stay under the radar on the network level. So, for example, Samurai was getting a lot of criticism back then because they were using, I think, blockchain or Bitbase or blockchain's API, and now they switched to their own backend. But in theory, I mean, I think Samurai is a pretty decent wallet, and they wouldn't do anything, but in theory they would know all the addresses of their people if they would want to do it. And the reason is because there is no good way to solve it. There are three kinds of wallets. One is what is Samurai is doing, or Blockchain Info, or Copay, for example. That is, they are asking a central server that what are the balances of these addresses, something like that, so they know exactly what are your addresses, which is not great. On the other hand, there are
we don't know your BIP47.
Well, you don't know because we don't have the private keys. Choose to not.
No, because we don't know that if we don't have the private keys, we can't calculate the BIP47 addresses on each end.
Yes, but you are asking. They are asking you what are the balances of these addresses, and if the timing is right, I mean, people are asking of the address balances after one another or something like that, right?
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So you could know that. I mean, I believe, and I think you are not logging or not checking it, but in theory this is flawed architecture. However, there is no good way to solve it. The other one is the Bloom filtering SPV wallets, what were very good in 2012 when they came out. Mike Hearn and Matt Corallo came up with that. They wrote the BIP. However, in 2014, there was a research what showed this is a very bad way to do things. And in 2015, Nick Jonas from Blockstream did another research, and he actually showed that 70% recur rate. What means, I quote him, give me one address of yours, SPV wallet address of yours, and I tell you 70% of your wallet addresses, which is pretty, well, scary. And these are the SPV wallets. And what is the other wallet? Is the full node. One more thing I would like to add to the SPV versus centralized, that in the centralized blockchain querying, only the centralized server knows in theory about what you have. However, in blockchain, in SPV wallets, basically all the blockchain analysis companies know it, because that's what they do, that's what they job. And what is the better way?
Should we explain how they know that? Because the way they find out what all the addresses are is by a process known as clustering. So a blockchain analysis company will send coins, Bitcoin, small amounts. They will set up accounts on lots of different platforms and lots of different services, and they will send coins to all these various addresses. So they'll set up on Bitstamp, and they'll set up on Poloniex, and they'll generate new addresses, and they'll keep sending coins, and then they'll watch the blockchain to see what happens to those coins. And from there, they can figure out where the hot wallets are, what the cold storage are, and then they can build a graph, and they can actually deliver that graph to companies so that they can start to monitor the use on the blockchain.
And now to this, any wallet, they can do it with any wallet, but to this, add the Bloom filters, what they are collecting from SPV wallets, and they are just putting the pattern into those Bloom filters. And that's how Nick Jonas came up with the 70% recur rate. And what is the solution? Of course, run your own full node, because what the full node does is actually asking all the transactions from the server, from the Bitcoin network, all the transactions it has. So no one has any idea which transactions you are interested in. And what my SPV wallet does is basically the same as the full node, except it doesn't do full node validation, but SPV validation. And it doesn't do the initial blockchain downloading, because it's okay if you got the transactions from the creation of the wallet. So it is faster, but still, well, on the one hand, it's still as slow as a full node, but you can skip that 2 weeks.
So what people need to do maybe is run full nodes and then program their SPV wallets to actually route the transactions through that as a border node.
Oh, well, yeah, you can do that, but I mean,
because I can't run a full node on my mobile.
Yeah.
Like, I think what he's trying to say, like, just try to help you out a little here with the words, Nopara, is like his model is kind of like a hybrid, like a half between like a conventional SPV wallet and a full node. Like whereas the SPV wallet just uses the Bloom filters to request like its balances from a central server, and the full node grabs everything from the whole chain and validates.
I mean, the SPV wallet is requesting the information from the Bitcoin network, from random Bitcoin nodes. So
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm
just
sorry,
to add.
I misspoke. Like the
Yes.
the filters would be grabbing it from a small collection of nodes, and then there's also the wallets that grab from a central server. But what Hidden Wallet does is it effectively you would create your wallet, and then from that moment forward, it would be grabbing full blocks and then checking each full block for anything relating to your addresses. And because there's obviously going to be nothing sent to you before you created that, it can just kind of start at the block that you create the wallet and then go from there without requesting specific transaction information that would give up your privacy.
Yes, there is another wallet like this Stratis Breeze wallet, just to add to the conversation. Yeah, yes, exactly. So it's easier to use than a full node, but still not that easy. But there are still things you can improve on it to be faster and convenient.
Okay, guys. So somebody's asking who Adam is. I mean, is there any kind of background you can give us before we move on? So the Hidden Wallet developer, obviously, but were you responsible for anything else? Are you famous?
I'm working on Tumblebit too.
Tumblebit. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I figured that you had done other things. I just wanted to make sure the audience were aware.
And I have a lot of Reddit upvotes too.
And he's really big on Reddit. So, guys, are we ready to move on to, dare I say, the fake news? Did I say it? I did say it. It's too late now. We're live. We can't edit that out later.
I would like to just have a second to kind of go over our architecture real quick. Yeah, so as Adam mentioned, we have a very similar architecture on our backend these days now as BCI does, meaning that we are a centralized server. We do query our own node and our own database to calculate balances and produce those to the user. And there's a simple reason for it. You know, we want to be a wallet that is capable of being run on the edge network in a really crappy mobile connection. And anyone who's a Samurai user will attest that it's probably one of the fastest wallets they've used in terms of loading up and sending and receiving. So that's the reason that we did that. The reason that we started and got a lot of can I curse on this channel, on this show?
Please do.
Yeah, we got a lot of shit for it. I believe it was Poop Wallet Narwhal on Reddit who broke the story, which, you know, is pretty awesome that you get to say, hey, yeah, Poop Wallet Narwhal really tore us a new one. Look, the reason that we used blockchain.info to bootstrap was because everyone was. Blockchain.info was the biggest API provider out there, and had the most amount of users, and it was quick and easy. We're two guys. We have zero funding at this point, right? And we want to get our product in the hands of users as soon as possible. So we did, and we told our users it was opt-in. They had to apply, and they had to be approved. And we told them, we're using blockchain.info. You will not be private using this alpha version. Do you still want to proceed? They all agreed to it. And as we've progressed and we've made our changes, we're no longer using blockchain.info, and we never would. Now, where's the next step go? Okay. If you're following the project, you would have noticed that we were one of the first wallets, mobile wallets especially, to implement trusted full node. Before Airbits, before Mycelium, before all these guys, we put it into the wallet because that was just the beginning of allowing the user to start using their own infrastructure to query balances, to query the blockchain, to push transactions onto the network, not using our infrastructure. Now, we're not quite there yet. Right now, all you can do with your own trusted full node is push transactions to the network, totally bypassing our push transactions. In the future, you'll be able to query blocks, you'll be able to query balances, you'll be able to do everything that you can do with a full node, but using Samurai Wallet as a GUI front end on your mobile phone.
Okay. Well, what I suggest then is we actually do like a video tutorial, because I mean, I don't know if you saw my full node project last year, but I did the, big outreach and went on the Kaiser report and everything.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I hand built full nodes for over 24 hours live on World Crypto Network, and I did it for the price of a Chinese factory worker, although actually I declare now I didn't make any money on that project because I ended up spending it all on t-shirts and other things for the giveaways. But it didn't matter. It was a work of art. That was the point I was trying to create, is that the financial meltdown kind of taught us one, big takeaway, which is that you should not outsource your financial responsibilities to other people. Just like when we say the cloud is someone else's computer, well, that's what the bank is. Like, you're basically you may as well get on a plane, take a bunch of banknotes with you and leave it with somebody. They then go off and hypothecate it and they can do what they want. But every time you go to the cash point, you're playing a lottery. You don't necessarily know whether this time will be the time that you can't get your money out. And you only find out when you're at the back of the queue at a bank run. So it really is about taking personal responsibility for your own shit. And yes, we don't mind a bit of cursing on this show. So can I move on now? Can I go to the
fake news?
To the fake news. So enough of the real news. All right, so the fake news, in quotes, is that Lightning Network will come to Bitcoin from tomorrow, say reports. And I guess it's okay if you put it in quotes and you say it's been reported and you don't say it yourself. I guess you can call it real. But yeah, Shinobi, talk to us about this.
Yeah, I'm not exactly clear where they put these sources together, because to me it just looks like a bunch of like disparate comments made over the years. They kind of compiled together to back it. But directly from Elizabeth Stark, the head of the Lightning Company, it is not going to be going live the minute that SegWit activates or anytime this week. Lightning, the daemon that Roast Beef is working on, LND, is still in alpha, but they are trying to push it out as fast as possible. And it's going to be sometime this year, but it's not going to be next week. I don't really know where Cointelegraph got that idea.
It was just a report, so that they haven't done anything wrong. They're just telling you what other people told them. It's kind of like, a rumor mill. So
yeah,
I guess that's okay.
I'd like to think that that news in this space can be of a little better quality than that.
Are there? I ask you. I will give away 0.03 Bitcoin if you can show me some really good journalism in cryptocurrency. That's a competition right now. The first person to send me a really good example of a good journalist, I will send you, $100 worth of Bitcoin, because I want to know where I can get my information from without having to do the research myself and dig into it and pour through the comments. So hopefully that's the work that we try to bring you here. And I don't know if you feel we have time, Shinobi. We want to go into this bill in Congress, because actually the website that actually released the story was the SSL certificates expired just before we came on air. So I had to find somebody who had a copy of it. But this was kind of reported the other day in the Daily Caller. Do you want to talk a little bit about this AML Bitcoin, as it's being called? What is AML Bitcoin?
Well, first of all, that phrase kind of threw me for a loop when I first saw that article. It has absolutely nothing to do with Bitcoin. If you actually go to a10coin.com, ATEN coin.com, they don't even have an SSL cert. This looks like a altcoin project, or something completely divorced from Bitcoin, that is essentially attempting to integrate anti-money laundering policies, Patriot Act compliance, know your customer rules directly into the coin. And this is a whole new level of just twisting things out of context, because there are simply 2 or 3 congressmen that were attempting to push a bill that is, I guess, based on this Daily Caller article, related to this entirely separate project. But the way the article framed it, it made it seem like it was about Bitcoin. And I think the idea of the legislation they're trying to push is essentially normalize cryptocurrencies, exempt them from the kinds of commodity capital gains tax that they're subject to in the United States right now, and kind of normalize it as a regular currency, with the caveat that they have a minimum standard of compliance with these AML, KYC, Patriot Act regulations. And That's I really don't know.
Shinobi, there are quite a number of Bitcoins already. I've got Bitcoin Monkey, Bucks, Cash, Chips, Bills, Note. There are loads of Bitcoins out there, according to Andrew DeSantis. Wait, you're telling me these aren't the original Satoshi's vision? Or, I don't know, is this Satoshi's vision or not?
I don't really think any of us are in a position to speak to Satoshi's vision. People's visions evolve, and last I checked, nobody's spoken to the man in years.
That is true. That is true.
It's like I really don't know what's going through these congressmen's head, because like the only thing I can really draw from this with the little bit of information is that maybe they're trying to push Bitcoin aside because of the nefarious connections with criminal activities and the cheating out of tax compliance and things like that, and replace it with this coin that I've never heard of before, and just try to push everybody onto that. Because the way that the legislation was drawn, you only are pretty much subject to these exemptions if you meet these KYC standards. So it seems like that these congressmen and whoever they're working with are attempting to like draw a stark line through the cryptocurrency space and essentially say these things that don't play ball with all the legacy regulations and rules are not allowed, but we'll allow anything that does. And I just, I don't really know what's going through their head if they think, one, that's going to work in the market sense that people would find it valuable, and two, that they could actually like just roll something like this out as far as a national policy like quickly enough to actually do anything. I don't know what they're thinking.
Okay. And for our final story of the day is the pull request on Segwit2x, or BTC1 Git repo, has been locked down for 24 hours for a cooldown period, according to Jeff Garzik. And this is after quite a lot of debate about whose responsibility was it anyway to put in replay protection into the upcoming chain split. And I love this. Mashuri put in this lovely little message here. So, well, like, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to lawyer up anyway. And I'm going to give you this concept of causation in law, which is a cornerstone when determining what parties are responsible for particular situations, quoting. If a chain split happens, then the parties who actively created the conditions that enabled the split are legally viewed as responsible. Being passive, not doing anything, typically legally exempts one from any responsibility. In this situation, it will be the parties involved in the BTC1 project who are actively creating the conditions for the chain split, and currently with no replay protection for users. That puts anyone who chooses to adopt BTC1 into potentially serious legal trouble. And so anyway, armchair lawyer stuff, lots of drama ensued. And eventually, just a little cool-off period. But then we also got this quote from Jeff Garzik on Twitter a few hours ago, saying the Segwit2x project is definitely in communication with the exchanges, and replay protection is an open issue with several possible solutions. Anyone want to take this?
Yeah, the legal matters aside, I mean, I just don't know what he's thinking on a practical, logistical sense, assuming that the Bitcoin should be the one to adopt replay protection, because this is the exact same logistical problems that make a hard fork an unsafe or unwise move at the moment. Everybody out there running Bitcoin would have to upgrade for that actually to go into effect. Like anybody who failed to upgrade, it would create the potential for that fracture, like their node to get banned because it relays something to another node that like doesn't recognize it because of the replay protection. And it's just logistically, it's the exact same nightmare that is the reason why we're here right now, arguing over this hard fork. It's logistically not a reasonable thing to expect an incumbent system in a network like this to be able to just snap their finger and roll out a new feature to respond to a fork like this when it could happen at any time due to anybody's actions.
As far as I know, it's impossible for Bitcoin Core to add replay protection for B2X or whatever the heck this thing is called. That the onus is on them. And whenever I see the argument being thrown around on Twitter or Reddit or wherever that it's up to core devs, I just stop engaging, because that argument is they know that doesn't make any sense, and they're not an honest participant at that point.
But
Okay.
that would be
So go ahead.
that would be Bitcoin Core hard forking from their own network. It's
Yeah, exactly. So let's go to the Trollbox. Let's see if we've had any comments. I think we've been joined by Blake Anderson and also Alp and a couple of the regulars. Wow, it's been pretty busy. James Bond, great to see you. And welcome over from the World Crypto Network. And yeah, some good stuff. I don't know if you've been making any insightful comments in here, but if you did, I missed them because I wasn't paying attention, for which I apologize profusely. I'm sure a lot of really smart comments were made. And I will just say to everyone who may have lost money in the recent Enigma hack, you do have my sympathies. I don't wish to come across as taking any pleasure in any of these Ethereum hacks. I will warn you, though, about ether addiction before we wrap up here. Don't get too high on the ether. Yes, it's pumping out those ICOs at a rate of knots, but those ICOs aren't like the traditional altcoins. There isn't like some, open source code that anyone can take over. You're basically just sending your money to strangers on the internet. So do think before you hit the send button. Any closing thoughts about ether addiction before we wrap up for tonight?
Yeah, don't get lost in that complex rabbit hole.
I think it would behoove anybody thinking about investing or getting involved in Ethereum to do a little more basic research on smart contracts in the abstract and the history of them, the complications, and pretty much just try to get a feel for why it took so long, being a concept that's been around since the 1990s, for them to actually come to fruition. Like Bitcoin itself, just a simple Bitcoin transaction that just sends coins from one person to one other person. That is a smart contract. It's just a very, very basic one. And it took us 15 plus years to go from these types of concepts being discussed to the most simple, basic one being implemented in a working way. And I just think people should kind of like temper their expectations and realize that further progress on that isn't going to happen overnight, and that you should really think twice before buying into somebody's claims that they're going to solve the world's problems with smart contracts, because we're still figuring out the very basics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, everyone, thanks a lot for your time. I think we should definitely do a video demonstrating the Samurai wallet and some of these privacy features, because I do think that the people who are trying to be radical and revolutionary right now are the people that are pushing this digital money onto the world without really recognizing the analog from which it came, which was cash, and the properties that had. Whenever we build things on the internet, whether it be MySpace, we're taking the mixtape online, or Facebook, we're taking the family album online, or whenever we try to digitize any of these pre-existing institutions and cultures that we have, I think you need to think about some of the properties that gave us. And just because there are certain properties that digital technology has that allows us to have this infinite memory, resources depending, doesn't mean that we should do it. Just because we can doesn't mean that we should. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in and paying attention to all the things we've got. Thank you very much for your time. And remember, you can like and subscribe below, but only if you want to. Bye for now.
Thank you.